Hey everyone, welcome back to Admix. Today I'm joined by Ian, our copywriter, and we're going to talk about the psychology of games.
Yeah, I think this is something that a lot of game developers are aware of, like the psychological tricks that you can use to maximize revenue. And it sounds sort of like a dark art when you think of it like that, but they are everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
They are so prevalent, and there's a lot of them. I think we can only talk about like a few today because there are just so many, and they all sort of weave together. But yeah, once you know what they are, you see them in every game you play.
And so is it? It's quite interesting that these things are really integrated with the design of the game, right? This is something that is not just here added on top, but to really make it work, it needs to be fully integrated with the story.
Absolutely, it's integrated into every single step. Like, you can tell that the developers made these plans from day one. A lot of the times, the bigger studios, or this is how it used to be, they'd bring in a psychologist to advise on this, to design these elements of the game. It's not as important now because they're so common that most game designers just know them by heart and they can design them, which means they're getting more common because you don't need special training to understand player psychology or player behavior anymore. It's only going to get worse.
And do you think that this, because they become really common, and some of them, I mean, I think there's two types, right? There are some that are really tricks, which is kind of the black hat thing that, it's almost really trying to trick the users, which I don't think would generate long-term benefit for the company, because you can only trick people for so long, right? But the other ones are more just playing on human psychology of, just similarly to what e-commerce companies would use to incentivize you to buy now instead of later, right? These are the kind of thing that I think would work. But I wonder if as these things become more and more popular in games, do you think that game developers, game designers constantly need to find new tricks to still find a way to attract these users because they get kind of blind to the tricks? Or do you think some of them are evergreen and can work all the time?
It's an interesting question. I actually think it's a little bit of both. The tricks probably won't change because the human brain isn't going to change anytime soon. The way we think, the way we behave, the way we respond to things, that's hardwired. We are biological machines. But we will become desensitized to how video games do it. So something I want to talk about today briefly is the daily reward cycle. You log in every day, or you do a daily quest. The psychological mechanism behind that is fundamental, and that's not going to change. But the way that it's done will be innovated on and given a fresh coat of paint, and that's what people will find interesting. So I don't think the trick will change, but the presentation of the trick has to always be innovated, or people will get bored.
Nice. Yeah, let's go through a couple of those that you've been writing about here. I'm excited to dive deeper in a few of them.
So yeah, I wanted to start on one that's actually it's super common in free-to-play games, but you don't really think of it as a trick of any kind.
It's the best tricks.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's when they have an introductory offer in an in-game store. Hearthstone does it, Magic the Gathering does it, Fortnite does it. It's usually a heavily discounted price. You get a fantastic deal of loads of things in this pack. And the whole aim of this is to get you to purchase one thing, to get you past that mental barrier of thinking, I'm never going to spend money on this game.
Mm-hmm.
They want to draw you in and think, this is such a good deal, I have to do this. Because once you're past that barrier, you will see yourself as a paying customer. The next purchase will be super easy. The first game that you purchased on Steam was probably quite difficult to do. Like, you didn't want to do it. The second one was a lot easier.
Yeah, that's very interesting. And it's a concept in game design that is generally called the first win state. And it's not necessarily paying, but it's every game designer knows that they need to get the user over to perform a certain action for them to be more engaged. And sometimes it can just be, we have stats showing that users who pass the tutorial are 10 times more likely to actually play the games in the future. And so the goal is to make sure that most of them are going through that tutorial without dropping off. And this looks like the same kind of thing, right? Like get them to spend anything. It's not about maximizing the value of that purchase, but at least in their mind, they know, I guess that, yeah, as you said, they are paying customers. They kind of made peace with the fact that they might spend a bit of money in this game. And then from there on, I guess it's all about starting to maximize the lifetime value.
Exactly. That's exactly the thinking behind this. It's in psychology. So the foot in the door effect is an economics term or persuade or compliance psychology thing. There's also a relevant effect in psychology called the what the hell effect, where they did a study on people trying to lose weight. And in one group, they allowed them to have some ice cream in the middle of their regime, like the middle of the 4-week regime. And another group, they didn't allow them to have any ice cream in the middle. The group that had that small amount of ice cream in the middle of their regime ended up eating a lot more ice cream in the second half, because they were like, what the hell? I've already ruined my regime. I'll eat more. There's really it's incredible how humans have a little hurdle that all you have to do to get over it is just buy something once or eat a little of ice cream, and then it's just a roller coaster down.
Yeah, it's also, very interesting.
I find it fascinating because it's also a display of how all of these tricks weave together. So with Fortnite, they innovated on the starter pack idea by having a limited time on the starter pack, so it changes over time, which means you can miss out on the current starter pack at as it's got such a great deal, meaning you've got this incentive to do it now, to take the plunge and make an impulse purchase, which I found really interesting.
Yeah, and I think it's also I can see the second one is this price anchoring, right? And a lot of them, as you said, would be linked together. So the first offer that you're getting, you probably look at it as, it's like 99% off or something. And so it further pushes you to actually buy it now. And you might also have a timer that shows you that, it's playing on your fear of missing out and the fact that if you don't buy now, you might never get that offer again.
Exactly.
And I think that's a really interesting one. And very often it is abused in games. I was playing a hyper casual game the other day, and at the end of every level, you can either capture a certain amount of points, or if you watch a video, which they make sound as an exclusive offer, watch this video, and instead of X points, you will get 4X. But it's every 20 seconds that they show you this. And so after a while, you're like, it's not really an offer. It's clearly you're trying to monetize differently. And it just almost feels like a pay to play, like they're forcing me to watch this video every time. So I think sometimes being very careful in how you design this to still make it look like it's kind of non-recurring offer, something that just happened now, it is more powerful in the long term than constantly presenting people with these offers.
Yeah, for sure. I think there's also something to be said about making your players feel special, feel like their experience in the game is unique. You said that it felt like this amazing exclusive offer, and then it offered it to you again, and suddenly it didn't mean as much.
Yeah.
Maybe there is some sort of power to sticking with your conviction and just being like, this is an amazing offer. It is just for you. We've tailored this to your behavior and your gameplay. We've noticed you use bombs a lot, so we're offering you an amazing deal on bombs. I wonder if that would have more of a powerful effect.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think anything that really feels customized is definitely would make you feel special, and you're more likely to answer to those kind of offers. And the problem with these mini games, the hyper casual games, is that the session times are so short, right? We're talking about 6 minutes, and users generally don't play. Retention on day 2 is probably like 20%, 15%. So people are not really coming back to the game much, and because of that, you really can't learn much about the users and the way that they behave. So, but if you move to more strategy games or mid-core or mid-core games where people play for a lot longer, so the game is able to learn about your playing behavior and things that you might like. This is where these offers, I think, create a lot more value over time.
It's true. It's very hard to make someone feel special in 6 minutes.
Right.
So let's talk about price anchoring then. You mentioned it a little bit earlier, a bit of a spoiler. So price anchoring, I find really interesting as well. A very common economics thing. You'll see it on coffee shop price boards. It's the idea that if you have the option to buy a coffee for £2 and a large coffee for £5, you're gonna get the one that you want. If I want a large coffee, I'll buy the large. But if you make a decoy price in there somewhere, say a medium coffee for £4.50, which is a terrible deal, suddenly the small coffee doesn't mean anything anymore, and that comparable price is what you're thinking about. Eventually, you're probably going to go for the large because it seems like you're getting the most bang for your buck. The Economist is a very famous example of this. They have a digital only and a print only option, and then a print and digital option, but everyone's going to go for the print and digital option because it's such a good deal. This is the example you'll see if you search anywhere for this phenomenon. In games, you see it all the time. For example, Candy Crush will offer you a bunch of gold amounts, and they'll have a decoy price in there, say a small amount of gold for $1 or whatever your local currency is. But then the amounts after that, or on the upper end of that scale, are so close together that the small option just feels like you're being exploited. Why would they ever get the small option?
And they can really drive you to the one they want. They can really measure, okay, they can create the prices to make sure that they drive you to the one that they actually want you to buy, not the most expensive one, not the cheapest one. So it's really, this fine line between that and price manipulation.
It's Candy Crush is also a great example because they have these banners on the options, and a lot of games do this, but it will say popular or best value, and that alone is like a social proof thing, which we'll talk about in another article or podcast. But it's the fact that other people must be buying this one, so it must be the best one. I don't need to think about that. I've got someone else telling me that it's right. It's very powerful.
Yeah, and it's been used really across everything, like every software as a service company providing services online. You always have the starters plan, and then maybe the startup plan, and then the enterprise plan, and they know specifically what features to add to each plan to make this one look like the best deal for sure. But it's a global thing, right? It's what's the best way to sell a $500 watch? You place it next to a $5,000 watch. It's as simple as that.
It really is. And it's so subtle. Like it feels like you're just being presented a bunch of options, but the mere act of adding numbers to those options guides your brain so easily. The amount of options they show you as well is engineered to get the biggest impact, because there's a common thing called choice paralysis, where if you've got too many options, you'll choose none of them because you have no comparison point. If you have 3 to 5 options, much easier to be guided to a choice.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Which talking about gold in Candy Crush brings us on to one that you don't actually see spoken about that much in the just conversation around this, and that's currency distancing. You have to ask yourself, why do so many games use fake currency? When you're basically, when you're buying things with your real money, it's just adding another step in the process. I have to buy these gems in order to buy this boost. And this has so many so much trickery behind it that, it's basically a no-brainer for a games company. The most common example, and the one that really sticks with me because it was such a pain point of when I was a teenager, the Microsoft points. You would buy them in these chunks of I can't remember how many, but it was like 800 or something. And everything on the store would cost like 600 or 1,200 Microsoft points.
Yeah, it's not a linear link between the two, so you can't even calculate what it's worth.
Exactly. Which, it's there's a trickery in that. Like you can't convert that number in your head. But this is an example of a really bad version of it, because it's so obvious that people were furious.
Yeah.
The fact that people were so upset that they removed it when the Xbox One came out says a lot. And yet this is so common in games today.
Yeah, and I mean the best example of that is casinos, right? You could well play with real money at the table, but they give you chips, because a chip, it's nice, it's shiny. You're more likely to send it or give it to people that money where you actually know how much it's worth. So they were really the first one to do that and create that barrier. And I think in games now you can see sometimes there's more than one level. It's, you buy gems and then you exchange the gems for diamonds, and then the diamonds, you invest them and you end up getting something else. And by the time, you're buying these crates of currencies, you have no idea really what it's worth or how much you've spent. Exactly. That makes you a lot easier for you to spend it as well, or to convert it, because it just feels like something that is not tangible, something that has no value.
Exactly. And that blurring the line between your money and the game's economy is absolutely the core of currency distancing. They want you to forget that this is your money. The slot machine games do it a lot, and it's interesting you brought up casinos. If you run out of, if you're spinning and you have a certain amount of spins, and that's based on the in-game currency, when that number goes down, every spin you do, you don't think, oh, that was 20p. You think, oh, that was one gem. So it just doesn't hurt as much. And if you're avoiding players getting hurt, feeling the pain of losing money, then they're going to stay in the game. As soon as they're not having fun or feel like they're being exploited, they're gone.
Yeah. And I think it's slightly different, but there's a mechanics that is also linked to this, is when if the game gives you a lot of coins, you're more likely to spend them because it's been given to you. So you don't really feel the value of it. If immediately you get 1 million coins, you'd be very likely to spend 100,000 of those, even though when you have to rebuy it, this 100,000 might cost you $200. But because they gave it to you up front, you don't get that sense of value, right? It's like, people that are born into a lot of money, they don't really get the value of money. And so I think this is the same feeling. And a lot of times games are trying to create that kind of behavior to then, again, put you over that line of, spending is okay within the game.
Absolutely. And that actually brings me on to another one of these tricks. So we'll skip ahead a little bit. I was planning on talking about this at the end.
No, I ruined it.
Oh, sorry?
I ruined it. So I didn't know if it was in the list.
My flow. So reciprocity, the fact that you're given something and you feel like you've got to give something back, like social obligation. You get given 100,000 gems and you feel like, oh, this was a gift. This was nice. This was unexpected and out of nowhere. You must really appreciate me. Maybe I can give a little back and buy some gems, and suddenly I'm a paying customer. Very, very common in games as well.
Do you think that works? Like, I would get that if between two players, like if I give you something, you might feel like you owe me. Do you think it works that well between a player and like a system, an app that gives you as well?
I think so. There's a Korean MMO, I've forgotten the name of it, but they have an item which you buy with real currency, which is called a gift bomb. And it is a bomb. And when you set it off, it just makes loot appear everywhere, but you can't pick up any of that loot. It's a purely social thing. And people absolutely love buying them. As soon as someone apparently goes into a town square with a loot bomb, sets it off, suddenly lots of other people are doing it partly because they're sort of giving back. Like, I just got stuff for free. Why not give it back to the other players? Partly because it feels good to give. And I think that's what games are trying to jump on. Partly because they get so much like love for it. I think that's a big part of this loop. The game needs to make you feel like you're a generous person for spending money in return. They need to say like, thank you for this.
No, that's interesting to see that even though it's not a real human, you can still play on this almost this social pressure, social characteristics. definitely a lot of game would use that.
Yeah, I find it really interesting. This is where I wanted to speak about that daily quest system, and this is something daily quests are so well designed that it's deserving of its own talk. But the idea that you go in and you get something in return just for showing up does a lot of incredible things. Firstly, it makes you feel like you are being gifted something, so you want to give something back in the end. It's sort of a long-term play. Over the course of 2 weeks, you feel like you've been given so much premium currency, so many gems that, what's the problem? I play this game so much, I might as well give back. But therein lies the kicker. The very fact that daily quests are daily, they're trying to make this a habit for you. They're trying to make you play the game every day, so that it's no longer just a time filler. It is something that you do regularly.
Yeah. It's almost this conditioning, right? The Pavlov experiment with the rats. Like you get them used to it, get them their daily fix, the daily reward, and before you know it, the users are going to be addicted to the game.
Absolutely, and that's tying into this idea of social proof again, which we'll talk about another time. But the pure social pressure of feeling like this is who I am. Essentially, well, it's not social pressure so much as like self-perception. Like I play this game, playing this game is something I do. I associate myself with this game, and this is something that's been within games forever. Like it's fandom. It's what drives people to get tattoos of their game or buy merchandise, and it's what is powering the merchandising factories behind games like Angry Birds. People associate themselves with it. They want to give back to it because it is part of who they are. And part of that is buying things that show other people that this is me. That's a whole other topic, but I find that amazing.
Yeah. I read something recently. I forgot who wrote it. It was, how to build a successful game. Well, you have to get people to think about the game even when they're not playing. That's how you define like success. And when people, either they buy merchandise related to the game or they thinking of playing while they can't, this is really when you know that you've built something, engaging, addictive almost, not just something that fills up their free time.
Yeah, and for the most part, I think it is a good thing. Like I think there's a lot of power as a creator not power so much as joy, I guess. There's so much joy in knowing that you've created something that people connect with and they share, and they want to share it because it means something to them. I think the fact that fandom is now being used as a monetization trick is where it's shady to me. Like I like the fact that people love games like Pokemon or BioShock so much that they have sub communities and conversations about lore of all things. But Angry Birds, I don't know about how deep the Angry Birds lore is, but it's clearly enough to fund a huge industry.
Why would one game be okay and the other not? You mean because of the depth of the metagame and story around these two type of games, or why are you more surprised in one case than the other?
It's a good question. I think it is a good question because then you have games like Fortnite where it's still a free-to-play, like monetization focused model, but the fandom behind it is still really rich and still very good. It's interesting. I guess maybe this is the point where like psychological trickery, like the line blurs between whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. Obviously, in the smaller cases, like trying to get as much money as possible using whatever trickery you can, that's probably bad. But when it reaches a point where people are so emotionally invested in something that they really care and it becomes significant to them, maybe that's bad. I guess it's when it is an addiction, when you have to.
And I think there was a few years back when Apple didn't have this, strict checks about kids playing. They used to have this really dodgy in-app purchase where, there's an app where the kid raises an animal and the animal is literally about to die. And the only way to save him is to press this button, which hides an in-app purchase. And there was a company that actually, many companies, I'm sure, profited from this, which was obviously horrible because kids don't know, what they're doing, right? And then the parents were racking bills of thousands and thousands of dollars a month just reviving these animals. So obviously this needs to be regulated. They need to make sure that people are fully aware of what they're doing. But I wonder if you think, what's next coming after this? Is there still space to innovate with these mechanics? Because a lot of them seem to be they're well designed, but it's all like, concepts that we know in psychology that are not specific to games. So do you think everything has been done? Do you think there's still room for innovation in terms of psychology in games?
It's a good question. I think there is room for innovation, but a lot of that innovation is going to need a better system behind it. I think to a point we have sort of plateaued. Like a lot of the famous psychology and economics trickery that humans can be exploited by, they are being exploited by. I think where the innovation comes into advancing technology like AI or blockchain or something to make these monetizing experiences really bespoke and really tailored to you. When, for example, when a really advanced chatbot can talk to you in real time and ease you into buying money or make it seem less taboo, I think that's really interesting. That is an innovation in monetization, but it's an entirely different level.
Yeah.
It's going to be very crazy when chatbots do get more advanced in that sense, because suddenly the idea of social proof, the idea of I need to buy this to make my friends look cool, is going to be sort of subverted by robots. I need to buy this to make this robot think I'm a good guy. But the future is crazy, I think.
Interesting.
We can have a quick chat about our last point as well. You mentioned that game where you had to click a button to keep an animal alive.
Yes.
Loss aversion is something that plays into that as well. So people really hate losing things. They hate losing $5 or pounds or whatever more than it feels good to gain £5. Apparently, the pain of loss is twice as significant as the joy of gaining something.
There's the prospect theory, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And this can show itself in lots of forms, like when you finish a level and when you're about to lose a level, you're about to lose all of your progress. The game can offer you more lives for a very small fee, and you're saved. You're scared of losing your progress, losing what you've made.
That's shady. That's a shady one.
It's very shady. What makes it more shady is that you can add extra things to it to make it like more significant emotionally. So you could add a timer to make it feel like you've got a limited time to do this, put some pressure on.
Yeah.
You could put
emotional purchase.
Exactly. Yeah. You can make it even more emotional by putting some text on it that makes it feel like you're a bad guy if you don't do this. Pop did that quite famously. They used the phrase, "Don't abandon the baby pandas," and then when you're about to lose, you put a little purchase on it. It's almost exploitative emotionally. I think that's probably the line where it's absolutely not okay. Because I can imagine like a 12-year-old playing this and getting genuinely upset that they've really let these pandas down.
Yeah. No, and I think as you said, Farmville that's really black hat for me. Like all the stuff that is playing on not on positive emotion, but loss aversion and undoing all this progress, all this time that you've invested in the game that can be just erased like this if you don't pay or if you don't do this. That's really the negative emotions. I think a lot less games are doing that now. I think Farmville has been, criticized a lot for this. And I remember specifically at the time, that was years ago, when most of the Facebook messages were people trying to get you to play Farmville. And I think I was a teenager at the time, and I needed to go somewhere with my cousin, and she was playing Farmville, so she couldn't go out with us because she absolutely had to harvest her farm. And she didn't want to. She was like, oh, it's such a pain in the ass. But then why do you play, right? Like she almost lost the first motivation of gaming, which is to have a good time, entertain yourself. It should never be a burden. And the mechanics were so strong that she hated it. She didn't want to do it, but she also didn't want to leave the farm. And so she had to like literally build her life around the farm for a little bit, which is just crazy if you think about, this is just a mini game, but the power that it has, it's just insane. And there's no doubt that they generated billions and billions in revenue.
Yes, that's an absolutely crazy example. When games start being fun and start being a job, that's probably a problem.
When you draw the line.
I mean, dating apps use this as well. Apps like Tinder, which gamify dating, by making left, right, they won't they? You can sign up to a premium membership to dating apps. A lot of them do this, and that gives you the option of undoing a swipe. So the fear of missing out on that one special person can motivate you to subscribe to a dating model for a long time. I find that incredible.
You can just swipe slower, right?
Yeah, I know, exactly. Like, just don't be as impulsive,
Yeah.
But yeah, these techniques find their way into every part of our lives. And I think gaming was honestly a little slow to the mark in many ways. Like I said, on coffee shop signs, you'll see the anchoring effect everywhere, every day. And you would have seen this a long time ago. Gaming is new and it's catching up very quickly, but it is catching up and going head and shoulders above other people just by how interactive they are, how much you get hooked, how addictive and how much of a learned behavior it becomes.
Yeah, no, definitely. If you link that with the engagement that the gameplay creates, and then on top of that, you create these mechanics, it can really be very, very powerful. I think the more engagement, the more people are passionate about something, the more easily they will be tricked, because, their own emotions and the fact that they're excited about it, they don't make emotional decisions. And I think that's what a lot of games are playing on. And I think it's great that we are, talking about this thing, exposing these things, so that people that might play a game might just realize, wait a minute, I know what this is. They probably still buy it, but at least they're fully aware of what the trick is.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, you've worked in this space as a game maker before. I'd love to hear your perspective on choosing to make these mechanics. Like, how would you feel about putting them in?
It's actually really hard to get right. This is something that we never really got right, to be honest, which is why we ended up defaulting to advertising. The main reason was that we were building games that were similar to hyper casual. They were probably a bit more advanced because we did build economy as well. But the session times were about 10 minutes, which is longer than hyper casual, but it's not long enough to hook users enough to get them to be fully invested and actually spend in our purchases. So we had a very, very low conversion rate on that app in particular. Our goal, pretty much everything that you mentioned here, we were trying to do, like currency distancing. You could buy coins, and then these coins could be redeemed for lives and stamina and other type of power-ups that we had. But it's just really hard to tune, really hard to get right, so that people, so it becomes a natural thing for people as they evolve through the game. And I think the first thing I would encourage game developers to do is first look at your retention. If your retention is more similar to casual games or hyper casual games, if it's only a few minutes at a time and people don't stay for very long, don't bother with the in-game economy, because the in-game economy only works when people are already passionate about your game. They think about the game. How can they, beat that person? How can they grow their farm or whatever it may be? There needs to be some kind of passion for them to actually invest their time and money and make that kind of decision. If it's just a pastime, people are not going to spend money. And so in that case, you're better off monetizing with ads.
Yeah, that's totally fair. Do you think there's an ethical element to this as well? Do you think developers should worry about putting these monetization things in and feeling bad about it?
Oh, for sure. But the good thing is, in this day and age, if you do something wrong or trick, it won't work for very long. Like you'll get exposed really quickly. People are very particular about this kind of stuff. So, yes, you might trick a few users, but you're not going to grow a successful game. You're not going to grow a successful app. So there's really no point doing it. At the end of the day, if you invest that time trying to create a great experience, you should really focus on the gameplay, make something that people love to use. People come back every day because it's exciting, and then try to figure out how you can further increase that engagement. But I do not believe that these mechanics alone can make a game successful. It's really an add-on. Once you have a strong base, you can, try to extract as much value as you can so that you can reinvest it in the game. But that shouldn't be the priority, and certainly shouldn't try to trick the users.
Nice. Yeah, I totally agree. That's really interesting seeing it from your perspective.
Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this insight into game psychology. For more of this content daily, make sure to follow us on all of our social channels. Click down below.